Commentaries. I'm your host, Sipon Sport, your favorite Unk on the net. So today we are back at our series. This is day 12. 40 languages, 40 cultures in 40 days. So today we are back in the motherland, the primal times of Africa. So we are back in the motherland. So we are looking at one of those primal times, primal kingdom, primitive times. The Carthage kingdom. That's what we are looking at today. The Carthage Empire, to be specific. The Carthage Empire. CC kind of city fan page. What's good, bro? What's good? I am live on a new angle today because my stand got broke this other day. I think I was live watching a Pirates match versus Mamelodi Sundowns. That day, my stand got broke. So I am coming on a brand new angle. I'm not sure if it's actually evident, but I got a new angle today. Not sure if it's going to affect my video. Oh, yeah, that's what happened. Cardiff City fan page. That's what really happened, but we can't complain. It's life, it's part of life. Such things are bound to happen. So today we are looking at the Carthage Empire. The Carthage Empire was founded in 814 to 246 BC. So that was a long time ago. So that's why I said it's primitive, probably not really primitive and not really primal, but it's ancient. So it's ancient times, 814 to 146 BC. It was a powerful Phoenician civilization based in North Africa, modern-day Tunisia, that's dominated trade and maritime power in the Western Mediterranean, known as its vast wealth and naval prowess and conflicts with Rome during the Punic Wars. And it was founded by the Tyrian settlers and destroyed in 146 BC. So that was an AI overview. Now, part of the things that we're going to look at as far as the Carthage Empire is concerned, we are going to look at its history. We are going to look at its history, terminology, government and politics, the Carthaginian or the Carthaginian colonization, military, language, economy, religion, society, and culture, the legacy, and the bibliography. Those are some of the things that we're going to look at. And then at the end of the day, we find out the language that was spoken by the Carthage people or the Carthaginian people, and then learn how to speak or how to greet in that language, because this is 40 languages, 40 cultures in 40 days. So the aim is to actually understand people for who they are and where they're from, what they believe and why they believe what they believe. Now, today we are in the motherland, the northern part of Africa, the Carthage Empire. Now, ancient Carthage was an ancient Semitic civilization based in North Africa, initially a settlement, present-day Tunisia. It later became a city-state and then an empire, founded by the Phoenicians. Who were the Phoenicians? We need to be specific about. Phoenicians were the ancient Semitic people who inhabited city-states in Canaan along the Levantine coast in the eastern Mediterranean, primarily in the present-day Lebanon and parts of the coastal Syria. The maritime civilization expanded and contracted over time, with its cultural core stretching over from outward to Mediterranean. Now, those were the Phoenicians. There's a lot that you can speak about when you speak about the Phoenicians, but I was just taking right at the top. Now, this empire, the Carthage, was founded by the Phoenicians in the 9th BC century. A Carthage Empire reached its height in the 4th century BC as one of the largest metropolises in the world. It was the center of the Carthaginian Empire, a major power led by the Punic people who dominated the ancient Western and Central Mediterranean Sea. Who were the Punic people? The Punic people, usually known as the Carthaginians, were a Semitic group who migrated from the Phoenicia to the Western Mediterranean during the early Iron Age. In modern scholarship, a term Punic, or the Latin equivalent of the Greek-derived term Phoenician, Now, these Punic people dominated the ancient Western and Central Mediterranean Sea. Now, following the Punic Wars were a series of wars fought between the Roman Republic and the Carthaginian Empire during the period of 264-246 BC, when the empire was actually dismantled. Now, 3 such wars took place, involving a total of 43 years of warfare on both land and sea, the Western Mediterranean regions. Now, Carthage was destroyed by the Romans in 146 BC, who later rebuilt the city lavishly. Now, Carthage was settled around 814 BC by the colonists of Tyre, a leading Phoenician city-state located in the present-day Lebanon. Now, in the 7th century, following the Phoenicians' conquest by the Neo-Assyrian Empire, Carthage became the independent, gradually expanding its economic and political hegemony across the Western Mediterranean. Oh, that's good. Oh, thank you, CC fan page. You can actually drop your comments if you have something to say. I'll constantly check up the comments. Now, by 300 BC, through its vast patchwork of colonies, vassals, and satellite states held together by its naval dominance of the Western and Central Mediterranean Sea, Carthage controlled the largest territory in the region, including the coast of northwestern Africa, southern and eastern Iberia, and the islands of Sicily, Sardinia, Corsica, Malta, and the Balearic Islands. Tripoli remained autonomous under the authority of the Libyco Phoenicians, who paid nominal tribute. Now, among the ancient largest and richest cities, Carthage's strategy located provided access to the abundant, fertile, and major maritime trade routes that reached West Asia and Northern Europe, providing commodities from all over the ancient world, in addition to lucrative exports of agricultural products and manufactured goods. Now, this commercial empire was secured by one of the largest and most powerful navies in classical antiquity, and an army composed heavily of foreign mercenaries and auxiliaries, particularly the Iberians, Balearics, Gauls, Britons, Sicilians, Italians, Greeks, Numidians, and Libyans. So this was actually a boiling pot of so many nations, because if you look at Greeks, Italian, Numidians, Libyans, Sicilian, Britons, Gauls, Balearics, Iberians, it's a mixture of Europe and Africa, to be specific. Now, as a dominant power in the Western Mediterranean, Carthage inevitably came into conflict with many neighbors and rivals from of North Africa to the nascent Roman Republic. Following centuries of conflicts with the Sicilian Greeks, its growing competition with the Rome culminated in the Punic Wars in 264 BC to 146 BC, which saw some of the largest and most sophisticated battles in antiquity. Now, Carthage narrowly avoided destruction after the Second Punic War, but was destroyed by the Romans in 146 BC. After the Third Punic War, the Romans later founded a new city in its place. All remnants of the Carthaginian civilization came under Rome rule by the 1st century AD, and Rome subsequently became the dominant Mediterranean power, paving the way for the Roman Emperor. Now, despite the cosmopolitan character of its empire, Carthage culture and identity remained rooted in its Canaanite heritage, albeit a localized variety of, or known as Punic. Like other Phoenician people, its society was urban, commercial, and orientated towards seafaring and trade. This is reflected in part by its notable innovations, including cereal production, uncolored glass, the threshing board, and the cotton harbor. Now, Carthaginians were renowned for their commercial prowess, ambitious explorations, and unique system of government, which combined elements of democracy, oligarchy, and republicanism, including modern examples of the separation of powers. Now, so hot in here. Despite having been one of the most influential civilizations of antiquity, Carthage is mostly remembered for its long and bitter conflicts with the Rome, which treated the rise of the or Roman Republic and almost changed the course of the Western civilization. Now, due to the destruction of the virtually all Carthaginian text after the Third Punic War, much of what is known about the civilization comes from Roman and Greek sources, many of whom wrote during or after the Punic Wars, and to varying degrees were influenced by the hostilities. Popular and scholarly attitude towards Carthage history historically reflected the prevailing Greco-Roman view, though archaeological research since the late 19th century has helped shed more light and nuance on the Carthaginian civilization. Yes, you can subscribe, Elios. Thank you actually for asking. You can subscribe. Please do. Really appreciate it. Now, the etymology. Now, the name Carthage is I can't read that name. I don't even know what language is that, but it's the modern Anglicization of Middle French Carthage, Carthage, from Latin Carthago and Carthago, Greek. Punic, in some time used synonymously with the Carthaginian, derived from the Latin Poenas or Punicus, based on the ancient Greek word phoenix. I thought phoenix had to do with fire. I don't know why Carthage, fire, phoenix, Punic, all those type of things. It has to do with fire, if my memory serves me right. Now, an exonym used to describe the Canaanite port towns with which the Greeks traded. Latin later borrowed the Greek term the second time as Phoenix or Phoenices. Both Punic and Phoenicians were used by the Romans and Greeks to refer to Phoenicians across the Mediterranean. Modern scholars use the term Punic exclusively for Phoenicians in the Western Mediterranean, such as the Carthaginian. Specific Punic groups are often referred to with hyphenated terms like Siculo-Punic, or for Phoenicians in Sicily, and Syro-Punic for those in Sardinia. And ancient Greek authors sometimes referred to the mixed Punic inhabitants of North Africa, specifically Libya, as Libi Phoenicians. Now, this is the etymology. Now, it is unclear what term, or if any, the Carthaginian used to refer themselves. The Phoenicians' homeland is Levant, was natively known as Put, and its people as the Punim. Ancient Egyptians accounts suggest that the people from the region identified as Kenani or Kinani, equivalent to the Canaanite. A passage from Augustine has often been interpreted as indicating that the Punic speakers in North Africa called themselves Kanani or the Canaanite, but it has recently been argued that this is the misreading. Numismatic evidence from Sicily shows that some of the Western Phoenicians made use of the term Phoenixi. Now, the sources before we go to history. Now, compared to the contemporaneous civilizations such as Rome and Greece, far less is known about the Carthage, as most indigenous records were lost in the wholesale destruction of the city after the Third Punic War. Sources of knowledge are limited to the ancient translation of Punic into Greek and Latin Punic inscription. Now, the language, we found the language, which is the Punic. So the Punic is the Punic people, usually known as the Carthaginians, were Semitic people migrated from Phoenicia into the Western Mediterranean during the early Iron Age. Modern scholars, blah, 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 blah. I thought that was the language, because now it says it was translated into Greek and Latin. Now, Punic inscriptions, there we go again, on monuments and buildings and archaeological findings of the Carthage material culture. The majority of available primal sources about the Carthage were written by Greek and Roman historians, mostly, or most notably, Livy or Polybius Appian, Cornelius Nepos, Silius Italicus, Plutarch, Dio Cassius, and Herodotus. These authors came from cultures that were nearly always in competition with Carthage, which their account might be false because probably they recorded in favor of their allies and against the Carthage people. That's my opinion. It doesn't count, but it's just my opinion to what is written here. Let's continue. Now, these authors came from the cultures that were nearly always competition with the Carthaginian Greeks with respect to Sicily and the Romans over the dominance of the Western Mediterranean. Inevitably, foreign accounts of the Carthage usually reflect a significant bias, as I've said, especially those written during after the Punic Wars, when the interpretation or the interpretation Romana perpetuated a malicious and distorted view. Excavated of the ancient Carthaginian sites since the late 19th century has brought a light more material evidence that either contradicts or confirms aspects of the traditional picture of Carthage. However, many of these findings remain ambiguous because the language has been lost throughout the age. So this thing of changing languages and culture and everything makes us not privy to actually understand what really happened in the past, because we cannot read these languages. For instance, if we go into the caves in South Africa, there are inscriptions from the San people or the Khoisan people. But for the fact that we can no longer read that language, we cannot understand the message that is inscribed on the rocks by the Khoisan people, because over the period of times, the language has been lost. When the language is lost, the history gets lost with the language. So I think we need to make sure that we preserve some of these languages, because with these languages, history is preserved. Now, the loss or the extinction of the language, is it the right word? Goes with the history. So we do have inscription from the Carthage Empire, but no one can decipher the inscription because the language has been lost. A shout out everybody who's been here. Rune, peace be upon you too. 9 trip from Brazil. Welcome, brothers. Please feel free to subscribe. We are doing 40 languages, 40 cultures in 40 days. Today is day 12. We are looking at the Carthage Empire in Africa. Now, let's look at the history of the Carthage Empire. Neymar, a brilliant footballer. I think we are aware what's happening, what's really happened in his channel 97 trip, since you are bringing up Neymar, because it's sports channel, but also we look at history, because before the sport there is history, and people who play the sports come from different histories. That's why we're interested in different histories from all over the world, so that we understand people and what makes them, their past, their present, and also we can understand the future moving forward by understanding the history and the past of the people. That's why we are doing 40 languages, 40 cultures in 40 days. As I was saying, that the loss of language results into the loss of history, because you can have samples from the history, but if the language is lost, then it's useless, because you can't decipher the message that is inscribed on those pieces of, whether it's rocks or pieces of information, whatever pieces of information you find. Then shout out to the Brazilians. Now, the history, the specific date or circumstances and motivation concerning the Carthage Empire founding are unknown. Most surviving accounts of the city's origins come from Latin and Greek literature, which are generally legendary in nature, reflect the Greco-Roman culture values. Now, the official Carthaginian foundation account, as reported by the Phoenician prophet Cleodemus Malchus and transmitted by the Judea Flavius Joseph, is that the Carthaginian and other Tyrian immigrants in North Africa were the descendant of Epha, a son of Midian, and also a grandson of Abraham. Now, speaking about the grandson of Abraham, okay, let me not go to biblical references, but Flavius Josephus, I think, is one of the writers, one of the few writers who actually wrote about the destruction of the temple in Israel during 70 AD, which marks the return of Jesus Christ as he promised according to the scriptures. I know that many Christians are still waiting for the Messiah to return, but according to the evidence that was written by Flavius Josephus in the destruction of the temple, if you look at the sermon, it's not the sermon of the month. If you look at the Olivet Discourse, when Jesus speaks to his disciples, I think it's Matthew 23, speaking about the destruction of the temple and everything that marks the end of age and the coming of the Son of Man. The temple, or the destruction of the temple, is one of those things that are key evidence that people were to look for pertaining to actually the return of Jesus, or the return of the Messiah, or the coming of the end of the age. The end of the age refers to the Israelites. What's good? What's good, Lily? What's good? What's good? Welcome. You're one of our oldest people here. Now, Flavius Josephus is one of the writers who actually wrote a specific, or actually the war that took place, the history pertaining the destruction of the temple and everything that happened surrounding the temple. So that marks the return of Jesus. Now, we are not preaching here, we are looking at the history. So it's just that the name Flavius Josephus came through. Flavius Josephus was a Roman Jewish historian and a military leader best known for the writing of the Jewish War, which was speaking about the destruction of the temple. If you read that Jewish War, you actually find the destruction of the temple, which marks the return of the Messiah. Now, he's best known for the Jewish War. He was born in Jerusalem, then part of the Roman province of Judea, to a father, priestly descendant, and a mother who claimed Hasmonean royal ancestry. Now, Josephus wrote about the Carthage, or the Carthaginian and Anatolian migrants in North Africa, were the descendants of Epha, who was Epha. Epha was a descendant of Abraham, mentioned in the book of Genesis as the second son of Midian, and therefore a grandson of Abraham through his wife Keturah. Now, also known as grandson of the eldest known Greco-Roman foundation of myth of Carthage was the city was founded by the Tarias, led by two brothers called Azoros, which is Phoenician, and Kakedon. Another and more widely known Greco-Roman accounts tells the king Pygmalion Phoenix Medad Sycabus, the high priest of Melkat, and also the husband of his sister Elisa. Now, known to the Greek as Dido, Elisa and her allies then fled his region and established Carthage, which flourished under the rule as queen. Several scholars has identified Bali, Menza, the king of Tyre, who paid the tribute to Shalmaneser in 841 BC, with Balaziros, who is regarded as Dido's grandfather. Now, who was Dido? Dido, in Greek and Roman mythology, Dido, also known as Elisa, was the legendary founder and the first queen of the Phoenician state of Carthage. Actually, this is piquing my mind that a woman from Europe came to Africa and established a kingdom. That's very, very interesting. Knowing that they were Canaanites already in that region, as far as my knowledge is concerned. Then she came through to the Canaanites and established a Carthage kingdom. That's very impressive. Now, several scholars have identified Bali, Menza, the king of Tyre, who paid tribute to Shalmaneser in 841 BC. Now, the Nora stone or Nora inscription is a Phoenician inscribed stone found at Nora on the south coast of Sardinia in 1773. Though it was not discovered in its primary context, it has been dated by paleographic methods to late 9th century or to early 8th century BC. At least nobody can still read that language. As I've said, that the loss of language also goes with the history pertaining that language. So it remains sketches that nobody can actually decipher what actually is written on those tablets or in that Nora stone. Now, the Nora stone found in Sardinia, dated in the 9th century BC, has been interpreted by Frank Moore Cross as naming Pygmalion as the king of the general who was using the stone to record his victory over the local populace. Now, the Roman historian Justin, writing the 2nd century AD, provides an account of a city's founding based on the earlier works of Trogus. Princess Dido is the daughter of King Belus II of Tyre, who upon his death bequeathed the throne jointly to her and her brother Pygmalion. After cheating his sister out of her share of political power, Pygmalion murdered her husband Asebus, also known as Sychas, the high priest of Melkarth, whose wealth and power he covets. Before her tyrannical brother can take her late husband's wealth, Dido immediately flees with her followers to establish a new city abroad, which is known as Carthage, as we are doing the Carthage Empire right now. Now, upon landing in Africa, she greeted by the local Berber chieftain Labas, known as Khayabas, who promises to cede as much land as could be covered by a single ox hide. With her characteristic cleverness, Dido cuts the hide into very thin strips and lay them end to end until they encircled the entire hill of Pisa. While digging the city of the foundation of their new settlement, the tyrant discovered the head of an ox, an omen that the city would be wealthy but laborious and always enslaved. In response, they moved the site of the city elsewhere, where the head of a horse is found, which is the Phoenician culture, is a symbol of courage and conquest. Now, the horse foretells where Dido's new city will rise, becoming the emblem of the Carthage derived from the Phoenician Carthage, meaning new city. Now, there's an art created by Augustine Cayot, which is the suicide of Queen Dido, which was created in 1667, somewhere there. Now, the city's wealth and prosperity attracts both Phoenicians from nearby Utica and the indigenous Libyans, whose king Labas now seeks Dido's hand in marriage. Oh, that kind of makes sense now. Now, threatening this war should she refuse. Also loyal to the memory of her deceased husband, the queen orders a funeral pyre to be built where she commits suicide by stabbing herself with a sword. Oh. She thereafter was worshipped as a goddess by the people of Carthage, who are described as the brave in battle but prone to the cruel religious ceremony of human sacrifice, even of children, whenever they seek divine relief from troubles of any kind. Now, Virgil's epic poems, the Aeneid, written over a century after the Third Punic War, tells a mythical story of Trojan hero Aeneas and his journey towards founding Rome, inextricably trying to gather the founding myths and ultimate fate of both Rome and Carthage. Its introduction begins by mentioning an ancient city that many readers likely assume that was Rome or Troy, but goes on to describe it as a place held by the colonists from Tyre, opposite Italy, a city of great wealth and ruthless in pursuit of war. Its name was Carthage, and Juno is said to have loved it more than any other place, but she had heard that there was rising from the blood of Troy a race of men who in the day to come would overthrow this tyrant citadel and sack the land of Libya. Now, that's actually a little bit of history as far as the Carthage Empire is concerned. Now, if we look at the government and the politics, are you watching T20 World Cup? Lily, I don't get the question. Who are the originals? Who are the originals? Please rephrase this question and be more specific, because if you say who are the originals, I'm thinking about too many things at the same time. So I can't give you a definitive answer as far as, oh, you are saying we are the originals. Like that. Okay, are you watching T20 World Cup? Imran, not at the moment, not at the moment. Actually, I know that South Africa has made it to the last 8, but I haven't been watching games because I've been working most of the times, and I come back at night and then focus either on sports, on football, or also in 40 languages, 40 cultures, and 40 days as I'm doing right now. So I haven't actually been tapped into what's really happening with the T20 as far as it goes. I'm sorry, bro. I'm sorry. I'm not tapped in. But you can actually update me what's really going on there. Now, looking at the politics or the political system of the Carthage kingdom, modern scholars continue to debate whether Greek sources misunderstood Carthage political structure, mistakenly referring to its leader as king due to the unfamiliarity with its constitutional system. Now, historian Richard Miles argues that Carthage oligarchic system dates back to the city's very founding. Phoenicians monarchs traditionally shared authority with an advisory council known as the Adarim, the mighty ones, composed of wealth merchants. Elite Carthage appears to have followed a similar model with the governing council called the PLM, a group of nobles who oversaw key areas such as religion, administration, and military affairs. Miles further argues that the legend of the Queen Dido, portray a dying without an heir, served a political purpose to reinforce the legitimacy of an oligarchic system by rejecting the idea of a lasting royal dynasty. Now, speaking about women leading the emperor, that's not a foreign concept. In Africa, if you look at the African history, there are so many emperors that were led by women. I remember that also the Nubians were once led by women, and they defeated Rome, I think 3 times, riding on the elephant's back. If you check the history, you'll find that type of story where the emperor was led by women who rode on the back of elephants and defeated the Roman Empire, I think 3 times. So it's not a foreign idea in African soil to actually have an emperor that is led by women. And they were very, very powerful and solid emperors, well run, well organized, well structured, and those kingdoms were prosperous. Now, according to the historian Yves MacDonald, it was during the 6th century BC that the Carthage political system underwent major change. Roman historian Justin recounts the case of the Carthaginian generals Malchus, who was celebrated for victories in Sicily, but later exiled after a defeat in Sardinia against the local population. Malchus returned at the head of a personal army and besieged Carthage. During the siege, he even ordered the crucifixion of his own son, who had been serving religious duties in Tyre on Carthage's behalf. After breaking into the city, Malchus executed several leading magistrates, though he was soon overthrown by a rival faction, put on trial, and executed himself. Now, a late 16th century BC votive inscription from Carthage references Malchus in a land that reads, in the 20th year of the rule of the Stuffets in Carthage. MacDonald stresses that both the inscription and Malchus' dramatic story point to a period when the Carthage shifted away from the monarchy and towards the oligarchic republic. Historian Dexter Hoyos places Malchus' activity roughly between 550 to 530 BC, which aligns the political upheaval with his lifetime. Hoyos claims that a different read from a votive inscription, the 120th or the 120 year, implies that effective aristocratic rule was already established by the late 7th century. Now, family oligarchy. Now, the Carthage Republic was characterized by the intricate system of checks and balance, a complex administrative system, civil society, and a fairly high degree of public accountability and participation. The most detailed information about the Carthage government after this point come from a Greek philosopher, Aristotle. Who was Aristotle? Aristotle was a Greek or an ancient Greek philosopher and polymath. His writings cover a broad range of subjects spanning the natural science, philosophy, linguistics, economics, politics, psychology, and arts. As the founder of the peripatetic school of philosophy in Lyceum in Athens, he began a lot of things you can actually read about Aristotle, And there are so many interesting things that the man did in his lifetime. Some of these things still affect life as we live it today. Now, who's 4th century BC theatized politics, discusses Carthage, and it's only non-Greek example. Now, at the top of his hierarchy stood the most influential and affluent merchant families who exercised a form of executive power. Historical evidence suggests that the leadership rotated among the different families rather than being passed down through a single hereditary line, implying that political authority rested on the approval of the ruling council. At the head of the Carthaginian state were two Safetes, who were Safetes or Sufits. In several ancient Semitic speaking culture and associated historical region, the Sophet or the Shofet was a community leader of a significant civic stature, often functioning as a chief magistrate with authority roughly equivalent of Roman consular powers. Now, Sufets or Shofets, which refers to or can be translated to judges, held a judicial and executive power, which while sometimes referred to as kings, by at least the late 5th century BC. Now, the Shufets or the judges were non-hereditary officials elected annually from among the wealthiest and the most influential families. It is unknown how election took place or who was eligible to serve. Now, Livy likens the Shufets to Roman consuls or consuls. Roman consuls were the two highest elected public officials of the Roman Republic. Roman considered the consulship the second highest level of the casus honorum, as ascending sequence of the public office to the political or the politician aspire after death of the censor, and so on and so on. Now, in that, they ruled through collegiality and handled various routine matter of state, such as a convening and presiding over the interim Supreme Council, submitting business to the popular assembly, and adjudicating trial. Modern scholarly census or consensus agreed that Livy's descriptions of Sufets, though some have argued the Sufets held an executive officer closer to that of a modern presidents or parliamentary republicans or republics, in that they did not hold absolute power and exercise largely ceremonial functions. Now, this practice may have originated from plutocratic arrangements that limited the Sufets' power in earlier Phoenician cities. For example, by the 6th century BC, Tyre was a republic headed by elective magistrate with two Sufets chosen from amongst the most powerful noble families for short terms. Unique among the rulers in antiquity, the Sufets had no power over the military. From at least the 6th century BC, generals became separate political officials, either appointed by the administration or elected by citizens. In contrast, Roman Greece, military and political power were separate, and it was rare for an individual to simultaneously serve as general and Sufet. Generals did not serve fixed terms, but instead served for duration of war. However, a family that dominated the Sufets could install relatives or allies to the generalship, as occurred with the Basid dynasty. Now, survival under the Roman rule. Survival under the Roman rule. Welcome to Devil's Commentaries. My name is Sipon Dovu, Sipon Sports at Ank on the net. So today we are doing 40 languages, 40 cultures in 40 days. This is day 12. We are looking at the Carthage Empire. If you are new to this channel, please smash that up and actually check out our content. We usually analyze sport, particularly football and boxing. Now, survival under the Roman rule aspects of Carthage political system persisted well into the Roman period, albeit to varying degrees and often in Romanized form. Now, throughout the major settlement of the Roman Sardinia, inscription mentions Sufetes perhaps indicated the Punic descendants used the office or its name to resist both cultural and political assimilation with their Latin conquerors. as late as the mid-2nd century AD. Two Suffets wielded power in Bithynia, a Sardinian city in the Roman province of Sardinia Corsica. Now, the Romans seem to have actively tolerated, if not adopted, the Carthaginian office and institutions, officially state terminology of the late Roman Republic, and subsequent emperor repurposed the word Suffet to refer to the Roman style local magistrates serving in Africa, proconsularis. What is Africa? Proconsularis. Africa proconsularis was a Roman province in the northern coast of the continent of Africa. It was established in 146 BC following the Roman Republic conquest of Carthage in the Third Punic War. It roughly comprises the territory of the present-day Tunisia, the northeast of Algeria, and the coast of West Egypt and Libya. Now, which includes the Carthage and its core territories. Suffetes attested to have governed over 40 post-Carthaginian towns and cities, including Altiburos, Calama, Caspa, Seta, Katiafala, Gales, Lemisa, Macta, and Tuka or Taka. Now, though many were former Carthaginian settlements, some had little to no Carthaginian influence. Volubilis in the modern-day Morocco had been part of the kingdom of Mauritania, which became a Roman client state after the fall of the Carthage. The use of the Suffets persisted well into the late 2nd century AD. The Carthaginian colonization. Now, at the time of its greatest territory expansion in 246 BC, on the eve of the First War with Rome, Carthage areas of influence consisted of the most of the Western Mediterranean through the settlement in North Africa, including Libya. Libya is in North Africa. Why are they saying in North Africa, including Western Libya? Now I understand. Western Libya, not the whole of Libya. Now, with at least part of the Mauritania coast, Sicily, Sardinia, and the Balearic Islands, and Spain, as well as small islands such as Malta, the Ionian Island, and Pelagi Island, but also by the control it exercised over the ancient Phoenician settlements such as Lixos near Tangier in Morocco, Magado, present-day Sauria on Morocco, the Adriatic coast, Geddes, present-day Cadiz in Andalusia, and Utica. Among the great Punic cities, they are, in addition to the capital Carthage, Hadrumetum, Respina, Cartagena, and Hippone. This is not English. Geddes and Utica, on the territory of the present-day Tunisia, were founded by the Phoenicians between the 12th and the 10th century BC. Carthage was founded on the peninsula surrounded by the lagoons, northeast present-day Tunis. At the height of its glory, African empire of the Carthaginian had a population of at least 3 to 4 million inhabitants. Now, military of the Carthage was one of the largest in the ancient world. Although Carthage Navy was also its main military force, the army acquired a key role in extending Carthaginian Empire over the native peoples of Northern Africa and the Southern Iberian Peninsula from the 6th to the 3rd century. Now, Hannibal Barca, counting the rings of the Roman knights killed at the Battle of Cannae, 206 BC, by Sebastian Slot's Guardians of the Toile Love Museum. Hannibal is recorded as one of the most brilliant military strategists in history. Okay, I was passing in that. Now, since at least the reign of the Mago, in the 6th century BC, Carthage regularly utilized its military to advance its commercial and strategic interests. Now, according to the Polybius, Carthage relied heavily through, although not exclusively, on foreign mercenaries, especially in overseas warfare. Now, modern historians regard this as an oversimplification, as many foreign troops were actually auxiliaries from allied or client states, provided through formal agreements, tributary obligations, or military pacts. Now, the Carthaginians maintained close relations, sometimes through political marriages, with the rulers of the various tribes and the kingdom, most notably the Nubidians based in modern northern Algeria. These leaders would in turn provide their respective contingent of forces, sometimes even leading them into the Carthaginian campaigns. In any event, Carthage leveraged in the vast wealthy and hegemony to help fill the ranks of its military. Now, contrary to the popular belief, especially among the more martial Greek and Roman, Carthage did utilize citizens as soldiers, e.g., ethnic Punic or Phoenicians, particularly during the Sicilian War. Moreover, like the Greco-Roman contemporaries, the Carthaginian respected military valor, with Aristotle reporting the practice of the citizens wearing the armband to signify their combat experience. Now, Greek observers also described the sacred band of Carthage, a Hellenistic term for professional citizens, soldiers who fought in Sicily in the mid-4th century. However, after this force was destroyed by the Agathocles in the 310 BC, foreign mercenaries and auxiliaries formed a more significant part of the army. Now, this indicates that the Carthaginians had the capacity to adapt their military as circumstances required. When larger or more specialized forces were needed, such as during the Punic Wars, they would employ mercenaries or auxiliaries accordingly. Carthaginian citizens will be enlisted in large numbers only by necessity, such as for the pivotal Battle of Zama in the Second Punic War, or in the final siege of the city in the Third Punic War. Now, the language. The language. Remember, this is 40 languages, 40 cultures in 40 days. Now, the language. Punic languages. Carthaginians spoke a variety of Phoenicians called Punic, a Semitic language originated in the ancestral homeland of Phoenicia, present-day Lebanon. Now, like its parent language, Punic was written from right to left in alphabet consisting of 22 consonants without vowels. It is known mostly through inscriptions. During classical antiquity, Punic was spoken throughout Carthage territories and spheres of influence in the Western Mediterranean, namely Northwest Africa and several Mediterranean islands. Although the Carthaginians maintained ties and cultural affinity with the Phoenician homeland, the Punic dialects gradually became influenced by various Berber languages spoken in and around Carthage by the ancient Libyans. Following the fall of the Carthage, Neo-Punic dialects emerged that diverged from Punic in terms of spelling, convention, and the use of non-Semitic names, mostly Libyco-Berber origin, who were Berber people or Berber languages, also known as Amazigh languages. Tamazight are the branch of the Afro-Asiatic language family. They comprise of a group closely related but mostly mutually unintelligible languages spoken Berber communities who are indigenous to North Africa. Berber people, I think we mentioned Berber people when we're doing the Nubian Empire. Now you can check the Nubian Empire. I think that was probably day 7, if I'm not mistaken. But you can check it out in the series of the 40 languages, 40 cultures in 40 days. Now, the dialect most likely spread through dominant merchants and trade stops throughout the Mediterranean Sea, notwithstanding the destruction of the Carthage and assimilation of its people into Romanic Republic. Punic appears to have persisted for centuries in the former Carthaginian homeland. This is the best attested by Augustine of Hippo, himself of Berber descendants, who spoke and understood the Punic and served as the primary source of the survival of late Punic. He claims the language was still spoken in his region of North Africa in the 5th century, and that there were still people who self-identified as Canaanite or Canaanite, which is Carthaginians. Contemporaneous funerary texts found in Christian catacombs in Sirte, Libya, bear inscription in ancient Greek, Latin, and Punic, suggesting a fusion of the cultures under the Roman rule. There is evidence that Punic was still spoken and written by commoners in Sardinia later, or at least 400 years after the conquest of the Roman. In addition to Augustine of Hippo, Punic was known by some literal North Africans until the 2nd or 3rd century, albeit written in Roman and Greek script, remained spoken amongst peasants at least until the end of the 4th century, because peasants are the carrier of traditions and culture and history, because there are at least people who are affected by the wars and disruptions and destructions, because they usually live in remote areas where they actually plant, grow their own foods, and live off what the nature provides. So it makes sense that they continue to speak the language for centuries after the destruction of the Carthage. Now, the economy of Carthage Empire. Carthage commerce extended by sea through Mediterranean and perhaps as far as the Canary Islands, by land across Sahara Desert. According to Aristotle, the Carthaginians had commercial treaties with various trading partners to regulate their exports and imports. Their merchant ships, which surpassed in number even those of the original Phoenician cities, visited every major port in the Mediterranean as well as Britain and the Atlantic coast of Africa. And these ships were also able to carry over 100 tons of goods. Now, archaeological discoveries shows evidence of all kinds of exchanges, from the vast quantities of tin needed for bronze-based civilization to a manner of textile, ceramics, and fine metalworks, even between the Punic Wars. Carthaginians merchants remained at every port in the Mediterranean, trading in harbors with warehouses or from ships beached on the coast. Now, the Emperor of Carthage depended heavily on its trade with Tartessos and other cities of the Iberian Peninsula. Tartessos is, as identified by archaeological discoveries, a historical civilization settled in the southern Iberian Peninsula from about the late Bronze Age until the 5th century BC. It had a writing system identified as the Carthaginians that include some 97 inscriptions in the Carthaginian languages that is unclassified today. Now, the Empire Carthage depended heavily in the trade with the Tartessos and other cities in the Iberian Peninsula, from which it obtained vast quantities of silver, lead, copper, and most importantly, tin ore, which was essential to manufacture the bronze objects that were highly prized in antiquity. Carthaginians' trade relations with the Iberians and the naval might enforce the Carthage monopoly on its trade and on the Atlantic tin trade, made it a sole significant broker of tin and maker of bronze on its day. Maintaining this monopoly was one of the major sources of the power and prosperity of the Carthage Empire. Carthaginian merchants strove to keep the location of the tin mines secret. In addition to its exclusive role as the main distributor of tin, Carthage central locations of the Mediterranean and control of the waters between Sicily and Tunisia allowed it to control eastern people's supply of tin. Carthage was also the Mediterranean largest producer of silver, a mine in Iberia and on the northwest Africa coast. After the tin monopoly, this was one of its most profitable trade. One mine in Iberia provided Hannibal with 300 Roman pounds for 3.7 talents of a silver a day. Now, these people knew how to actually create, maintain, and protect their wealth. Now, Carthage economy began as an extension of that of its parent city, Tyre. Now, its massive merchant fleet traversed the trade routes mapped out by Tyre, and Carthage inherited from Tyre a trade in the extremely valuable dye, Tyrian purple. Now, no evidence of the purple dye manufactured had been found in Carthage, but mounds of shells of the mule marine snails from which it derives has been found in excavation of the Punic town in the Kokwane or in the Kerkwane at Dar es-Saf on Cap Bon. Similar to the mule has also been found in the Jebel, the Gulf of Gapes in Tunisia. Strabo mentions the purple dye works of Jebel as well as those of the ancient cities in Zuchis. Now, religion. Actually, there's a lot as far as the economy of the Carthage Empire is concerned, but the time flies. Let's check a little bit of religion. After religion, we will check out its legacy and then the language, and then learn if you can find something that has to do with the language of the Carthaginian people, or Carthaginian language, or Phoenician language, or Punic language, if I may put it that way. Now, character and origin. The Carthaginians worship numerous gods and goddesses, each controlling a particular theme of aspect of nature. They practice a Phoenician religion, a polytheist belief system derived from the ancient Semitic. Now, Phoenician religion, the religion of a mythic belief of people in the land of Canaan and in the southern Levant during the approximately first 3 millennia BC, were polytheistic and in some cases monolatristic. They were influenced by the neighboring cultures, particularly ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamia. Now, a polytheistic belief system derived from the ancient Semitic religion and Levant. Although most major deities were brought from the Phoenician homeland, Carthage gradually developed a unique customs, divinities, and style of worship that became central to its identity. Now, supreme gods Baal, Hammon, and Tanit presiding over the Carthaginian pantheon was supreme divine couple Baal, Hammon, and Tanit. Baal or Baal Hammon had been the most prominent aspect of the chief Phoenician god Baal, but after Carthage independence became the city's patron god and chief deity or deity. He was also responsible for the fertility of crops. His consort Tanit, known as the face of Baal, was a goddess of war, a virginal mother goddess and nurse, and a symbol of fertility. Now, I want us to pause on a virginal mother goddess. Tanit, a virginal mother goddess. That sounds familiar. There are some biblical references that refers to a virginal mother, Mary, mother of Jesus. Now, if we were to take the Carthaginian religion, that will make Jesus the son of Baal. If we were to actually take the Messiah from the Bible and insert him into the Carthaginian religion, he will be the son of Baal, and his consort Tanit. Okay, let's continue. I am sorry if I have blasphemed the Lord and the Savior, Jesus Christ. I'm sorry. Yeshua HaMashiach. God forgive me for that. Now, although a minor figure of Phoenicia, she was venerated as the patroness or patroness and a protector of Carthage, and was also known by the title Rabat, the female form of Rab or chief, while usually coupled with Baal. She was also mentioned first. The symbol of Tanith, style or stylized female form of outstretched arms, appears frequently in tombs, mosaic, religious stelae, and various household items like figurines and pottery vessels. Now, if you think about the images of Mary outside the Catholic Church and you look at Tanit, I think it resembles the same thing. I'm not sure if the Roman or the Catholic Church actually, when they speak about the Virgin Mary and the picture that they put outside the church, refers to Tanit, as I'm reading here, I don't know, twisted history and then replaced it Virgin Mary. I'm just asking, because that image actually is a perfect symbol of Tanit and the religion of the Carthage Empire and every other thing that's been happening in the course of history. I'm just curious as I'm reading. I don't know which came first, the Bible and everything that happened and the stories of the Bible, or this history that I'm reading here. I don't know which came first. But one had to borrow from the other, either way. Now, the symbol of Tanit, stylized female form and outstretched arm, appears frequently in tombs, mosaics, religious stelae, and various household items like figurines and pottery vessels. The ubiquity of her symbols and the fact that she is the only Carthaginian deity with an icon strongly suggests that she was Carthage's paramount deity, at least in later centuries. In the Third Punic Wars, the Roman identified her as the Carthage protector. The Roman identified Tanit as the Carthage protector, and then later on, the Roman Catholic Church has the same symbol inside the premises of the church, sometimes inside the church building, where we're supposed to worship Jesus Christ, the Lord and Savior, who died for our sins. Other deities. Let's continue moving. Okay. Vuyani Hotlang, can you see Richards Bay versus Amazulu match? We'll check it out. We'll check it out after I've finished here in 10 minutes. Thank you, Vuyani Hotlang. Then Makubi, my friend, long time no see. What's good, Makubi? What's good? Is that not modern day Libya? Carthage. It is, bro, it is. Tunisia, I think. Modern day Tunisia. You almost got it. Modern day Tunisia and the western part of Libya. Yeah, you're correct, by the way. Thank you, Makubi. Makubi is always dropping some knowledge. I don't know which school he went to, but he always knows stuff that I have no idea existed. But you got it right, bro. You got it right. Now, other deities. Now, other Carthaginian deities attested in Punic inscription were Esmun, the god of health and healing, Reshef, associated with the plague, war, or thunder, Kuso, god of knowledge, and Havot, goddess of death, Astarte, a goddess connected with fertility, sexuality, and war, seem to have been popular in earlier times, but became increasingly identified as Tanith. I don't know, not every time, there's somehow sexuality and war and fights and ruthlessness always goes together. I don't know why. The great fighters, the great warriors are known to be the drinkers of wine and people who actually love sex. They live by sex, wine, meat, and then they go to war. That's all that defines them. You give them meat, wine, and women, and then give them arms then your army will actually win battles. I don't know why, but that always goes together. Now, if you see a man that don't really like women, don't really like his wine, don't really enjoy or love sexes much, don't send that nigga into war. You won't win that war. Just keep them somewhere else and let them be busy with some other stuff. Those that love sex and women and alcohol, send those to war. You are going to win that war. You can verify that if it's lies or not. You can verify that. Sex, wine, and a lot of meat. Those are the warriors who are actually going to win you battles. Okay, let's move on. Organization, temples, priests, services. Now, contrary to the frequent change in impiety or by Greek Roman authors, religion was central to both political and social life in Carthage. The city had as many sacred places as Athens and Rome. Surviving Punic texts indicate a very well-organized priesthood class who were drawn mostly from the elite class, distinguished from the most of the population by being clean-shaven, as in the Levant temples were among the wealthiest and most powerful institutions in Carthage and were deeply integrated into the public and political life. Religious rituals served as a source of political unity, legitimacy, and were typically performed in public or in relation to state function. Temples were also important to economy, as they supported the large number of special personnel to ensure rituals were performed properly. Priests and acolytes performed different functions for a variety of prices and purposes. Now, the cost of various offerings or mulk were listed in great details and sometimes bundled into different prices categories. As applicants were often accorded a measure of consumer protection, with temples giving notice that priests will be fined for abusing the pricing structure of offering. Now, interaction and syncretism. Syncretism and interaction. The Carthaginian has a high degree of religious syncretism. What is syncretism? Syncretism is the combining or matching of various distinct beliefs or school of thought, particularly the religious one. For instance, features of components of one religious are incorporated and absorbed into one another, and it can include assimilation of several originally discrete traditions. Now, this includes Greece, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Italy. Conversely, and many of its cults and practices spread across the Mediterranean via trade and colonization. Carthage also had communities of Jews, Greeks, Romans, and Libyans. The Egyptian gods, or the Egyptian god Bes, was popular for warding off evil spirit, and is featured prominently in Punic mausoleums. Now, Bes, together with his feminine counterpart Beset, is an ancient Egyptian deity of Nubian or Sea group culture, origin worshipped as a protector of household and in particular of mothers, children, and childbirth. Bes later came to be regarded as the defender of everything good and the enemy of evil. Bes. Let me read more about Bes. A little bit about Bes. Now, according to Donald Mackenzie, in 1907, Bes may have been a Middle Kingdom import from Nubia, and his cult did not become widespread until the beginning of the New Kingdom. But more recently, several Bes-like figures have been found in deposits from the Naqada periods or pre-dynastic Egypt, like 13 figurine found in Tel El Faka. Worship of Bes spread as far as north and as the area of Syria, and as far as west of Balearic Islands, Ibiza in Spain, and later in the Roman and the Achaemenid empires. Now, origin. The Upper Egypt stated venerating bears long before people in Lower Egypt, indicating the Nubian origin. The word bears mean cat in Nubian, suggesting a possible Nubian or southern origin of bears. The god have been regularly been depicted as the feline feature. Bears' sub-Saharan features also indicate a Kushite Sea group origin, as well as a late introduction of the Egypt during the Middle Kingdom. The feathered crown was also common of dress in the ancient Kush, which is also found in, I think, the king regalia in the Bantu kingdom. They still somehow have a feather in the crown. I think that has to do with the bear's worship all the way from the Nubian Empire, because we derive from the Nubian Empire. It's said that we can no longer actually trace back the origin of the Nubian customs and belief system, because they've built a dam where it used to be the kingdom of the Nubian Emperor. Now Islamization came in, and in Egypt they built a dam there, so we can no longer found or trace that type of establishment or type of okay, let me continue. Enough with the politics. Romans copied a lot from the Carthaginian. Yeah, you're correct, bro. You're correct. There's so many things. Actually, if you read the Carthaginian belief system and everything that happens, and you go to the Roman Catholic Church, most of the things that you see there is what is written in the in the Empire of Carthage. Now, the question is, because some say that the Carthage Empire derives from Tyre, which is in Europe. Who borrowed from who, I do not know, but when the woman who is said to have found this emperor came to Africa and was given a piece of land or a strip of land, and he was given a hand of marriage by the leader at that time, which he decided to actually commit suicide, according to the history. I'm not sure if that's truth. But who copied from who? Did she came from Tyre, or she came and actually learned that and help people, and then they take what they've learned from there and take it back to Europe or Rome, to be specific? But on the other hand, you know that the children of Israel were subject to the Egyptians for 40 years, and then they learned a lot, 400 years I think, they learned a lot from Egypt and then take it back to the promised land. Maybe that's why we see so many things that interconnect as far as the religion is concerned. I don't know. Euro-Africa, by what country are you staying? I'm from South Africa, Euro-African. I'm from South Africa, KwaZulu-Natal. I speak isiZulu. That's my mother language. I am Nguni. I belong to the Nguni tribe. So as I was saying, that the Nguni tribe derived from the Nubian people or Nubian Emperor, which is now buried under the dam that was built by the Islamic people in Egypt. So we can no longer trace back the origin, belief system, and anything that has to do with the Nubian Emperor. Now, rituals and theology. Now, little is known about the Carthaginian rituals or theology. Me, I'm originally from Ghana, but now I'm doing Uber and a crime by England. Uber and crime, bro. Why are you saying you're doing crime? I understand you're doing Uber, but crime? Don't do that, bro. Gemda, what's good? Gemda, welcome back. Me, I know a little bit of Zulu. Wenzan, bro, you are a South African. Stop playing. You are a South African and when Zulu. Ngibhalika mala kwele Zulu kuthi ubani wakabani ngivele ngikhuluma isiZulu straight. Gemda, what's good? Gemda. Now, what is known from the excavation of the tombs where figurines, female musicians performed music from pipes and drums were found. These figurines showed how women would have played a major part in music, and music being important during rituals. Excavation also reveals seashells that were placed with the dead. Archaeologists give these seashells the same attribute as the meaning as those found in Egyptian tombs as interments. Though they are burial in many ways, all are seen to give protection to the living and the dead. Now, for Melkak awakening, right? I'm not going to read that. Mayama's festival. Punic inscription found in Carthage attest Mayama's festival, probably involving a ritual portage of water. The word itself is arguably a Semitic calque on the hydrophoria. Each text ends with a word for the lady of turned face Baal or Baal, and for the Lord Baal of the Amanus, for which so and so vowed. Now, belief in the afterlife. Excavation of tombs reveals utensils for food and drinks, as well as paintings depicting what appears to be a person's soul approaching a walled city. These findings strongly suggest a belief in life after death. Human sacrifice. Carthage was accused by both contemporary historians and adversaries of child sacrifice. Plutarch, Tertullian, Orosius, Philo, and Diodorus Silas also all allege the practice, although Herodotus and Polybius do not. Now, Tertullian is one of the historians who's actually recognized by the Christian writers or scholars. Tertullian was a prolific early Christian author from the Carthage in the Roman province of Africa. He was the first Christian author to produce an extensive corpus of Latin Christian literature and was an early Christian apologist and a polemicist against heresy, including contemporary Christianity. He is one of the first black people who were actually Christians, according to history of the church. Now, according to the Charles Picard, Greek and Roman, I want to leave crime behind. Yeah, leave it behind, bro. Leave crime behind. Can I come to South Africa and do an Uber? Is Uber a nice business by South Africa? Yeah, it is. It is. It is very, very good, particularly in bigger cities like Johannesburg, Durban, and also Cape Town. I think if you go to those cities, you will actually do good. But make sure that you got your papers right when you come to the country, so that you won't have a problem with the law. And thank you, Euro Africa. Please do exactly that, and then I think you might actually find something to do as far as Uber is concerned. Uber and Bolt, I think. Now, let's continue. According to Charles Picard, Greek and Roman critics object not to the killing of children, but also to its religious context. In both ancient Greek and Rome, inconvenient newborns were commonly killed by exposure to the elements. The Hebrew Bible mentioned child sacrifice practiced by the Canaanite ancestors in the Carthaginian and Jew, while the Greek sources alleged that the Phoenicians sacrificed the sons of princes during the times of grave peril. However, archaeological evidence of human sacrifice in the Levant remains sparse. Now, account of child sacrifice in Carthage date the practice to the city founding in about 814 BC. Sacrificing children was apparent, distasteful even to Carthaginians, and according to the Plutarch, they began to seek alternatives to offering up their own children, such as buying children from poor families or raising servant children instead. However, Carthage priests reportedly demanding youth in times of crisis such as war, drought, famine. Contrary to Plutarch, Diodorus implies that noble children were preferred. Extreme crises wanted, especially ceremonies where people up to 200 children of the most affluent and powerful families were slain and tossed into the burning pyre. Yo! Them niggas were cruel, bro. Them niggas were cruel. 200 children tossed on fire and were roasted. I hope they were not thrown into fire alive. Now, modern archaeology in formerly Punic areas has discovered a number of large cemeteries for children and infants, representing a civic religious institution of worship and sacrifice. These sites are called the Tophet by the archaeologists, as a Punic name is unknown. These cemeteries may have been used as graves for stillborn infants or children who died very early. Now, the excavation has been interpreted by many scholars as confirming Plutarch reports of Carthaginian child sacrifice. An estimated 2,000 urns were deposited between 400 to 200 BC in the Tophet discovered in the Solambo neighborhood of a present-day Carthage, with the practice continuing until the 2nd century. Now, the majority of the urns in the site, as well as the similar site in Motia, Tharos, contain the charred bones of infants, fetuses. In rare instances, the remains of the children between the ages of 2 and 4 have been found. The bones of animals, particularly lambs, are also common, especially in earlier deposits. Now this make me wanna ask a question. Do you remember, according to the Bible, according to the history in the Bible, do you remember when the time where children were being executed and Moses was hidden by the river and was found by the daughter of a pharaoh, and then he was raised in the house of Pharaoh? Do you remember the story? Was that instituted by the children's sacrifice that I read about here? And also, okay, the Jesus story is different because the king at the time, I think Herod, feared that he was going to be overthrown by the Syrians, and he slain the children under 2. Now that's a different story, but the one for Moses can somehow be related to this human sacrifice rituals by the Carthaginian Empire? I'm just asking because I'm curious. Okay, now the bones of animals, particularly lambs, are also common, especially in earlier deposits. There's a clear correlation between the frequency of cremation and the well-being of the city during the crisis. Cremation appears more frequent, albeit for unclear reasons. One of the explanations is that the Carthaginians sacrificed children in return for divine intervention. However, such crises were naturally led to increased child mortality, and consequently more child burial via cremation. A skeptic maintained that the bodies of children found in Carthaginian and Phoenician cemeteries were merely the cremated remains of the children who died naturally. Oh, that's a different story. Now, Regini has argued that the Tophet was a child necropolis designed to receive the remains of an infant who had died prematurely of sickness or other unnatural causes, who for this reason were offered to a specific deity and buried in a place different from the ones reserved for the ordinarily dead. And if you look at Nguni set up, particularly with the Zulu people, when it comes to burial, we do not just bury people anywhere. Culturally. Now, if you go to a certain homestead and you look at their cemetery, maybe you might spot some differences, and then depending on that, a specific clan, but they could explain that why that tomb is positioned that way, why that one is facing that direction. There are different reasons how people are buried culturally. I don't know if it truly works, but it's something that has been carried on until today. In some families, it still happens. Now, this derives all the way back from 400 BC till today, because we are descendants of these people. Now, I think now we are coming to the end of the Carthage Empire. Now, if you want to read more about the Carthage Empire, you can actually research what the Carthage Empire was about, but it's an African, one of the older African emperors that ruled for a number of centuries. But we need to actually check out the language. that was being spoken in that emperor, and see if we can actually try and speak a few words, formalities. This is 40 languages, 40 cultures in 40 days. Today we are doing the Carthage Empire and their Punic dialect. Now we are in the language trying to learn a few things about the language, Punic language. Now, the language of the ancient Carthage was Punic, a dialect of Phoenicians, which was Semitic language closely related to Hebrew, a dead language. It's a dead language. Most of what is known comes from the inscription of the few lines in a Roman play. Here is what is known of the greeting in Punic. General greetings. The Punic greeting was likely very similar to the Hebrew shalom, which is peace, and it is generally represented in Punic inscription as SLM, which is shulm or shalom. Peace be upon you. Shalom alaikum. Shalom alaikum or shalom alaikum was used, which translates to peace be upon you, which was later adopted by the Arabs, and now is known for Islamic greetings as of today, but it comes all the way from a Punic dialect of the Phoenicians, which was the part and parcel of the Carthage Empire. Now, maybe it was the inscription often phrase wishing a well-being or peace upon someone as phrased with the root shalom. Now, there's little that you can find as far as the Punic dialect is concerned. So I think that brings us to the end of today's history lesson. So tomorrow by 12 midday, we are looking at the Song Dynasty from China. So for 2 hours, we'll be simply looking at that. And then later on, we'll check football. Pirates is playing tomorrow, and also Mamelodi Sundowns, they are playing. So we'll check out those two games, react to them live. I think on Sunday, we'll check from Song Dynasty, we'll go to Persia. On Sunday during the day, 12 to 2. And then we'll see what's going to happen next week. But that's what's going to happen from tomorrow to Sunday. It's Song Dynasty tomorrow morning, tomorrow during the day, and then later on, the Orlando Pirates game is playing, reacting live. Orlando Pirates and Sundowns later is playing. We'll be reacting live to those games. It's a Nedbank Cup and knockout. So we'll see. I'm hoping that those two teams progresses to the next stage and then feature again. And then he will witness a beautiful football as we've seen on Wednesday. Unfortunately, Pirates lost, but we are bringing this together. We are bringing this to an end, and this was 40. But noma kunjalo ngiyayibhejela emnyama mfowethu, ngiyabheja ngemnyama. So we are coming to an end. This was 40 languages, 40 cultures in 40 days, then 12 of that. This was Carthage Empire. I love you everybody. If you're new, please smash that sub and check out our other content. We are growing a little bit. Thank you everybody who actually subscribed to a channel. We've jumped to at least 2,000 something subscribers. So soon we'll be hitting 3,000 subscribers. We are on the road to 10,000 subscribers. Thank you everybody who showed us love. We love you back 1,000 times more. Take care of yourself. From me to you, the Black Italian himself, I'm saying, a pronto piacere, a pronto piacere. I will see you again tomorrow at 12 noon, and then later on a Sea Pirate and Sundowns. Thank you very much. I love you all. Good night. Have a nice weekend.